Okay, so when we're looking at processing aerial photo, it's really a lot different, just in the sense that there's not as much to it, but there are several things that have to be paid attention to. So we'll start going through those. One of the things is the horizon is super important. I don't send out photos with a crooked horizon, and you'd be amazed at the number of people that do. But once you start looking at the horizon, it's almost like you can't stop looking at it, especially if it's crooked. Now this one actually has a little bit of a bend to it, but we'll get into that. Like most photos, we've got some presets. I use my outside sharp grass, and you see it brings the greens out, and in some cases that's all that's needed. Now what I do like to do, instead of just clicking that and moving forward, is I still like to hit the 3 sliders and just see if I can improve on it. You know, this was at 0.12 to start, and so I'll do the photo without really looking at it and see what I think is good, and I end up pretty close. I ended up at 0.24 2 times in a row. And then the shadows on aerial photos are just going to wreck the trees. So it's all these darks that are in these trees here. Sometimes if I'm a little bit lower down close to the ground, then it's good to pull them out. But when the shadows are out, in this case it kind of blows the photo out, and when you start to bring them back down, it gives the photo a little bit more dynamic range. So I would say that's good there. And then same thing with the darks. You know, it blows it out. It's too much. Kind of get a feel for what's good. And it's still in that same range. My preset, I believe, is at -13 or so. So anyhow, there wasn't a big change on this one. Sometimes there will be, though. And then we get down here and we look at taking care of the horizon. Now the biggest thing I look for on the horizon, and I can't keep the grid up there and show you with the mouse at the same time, but is the distance between the hill here, whatever the horizon, and whatever the grid line is, as well as this side. So if there's some weird thing going on in the middle with some hills or whatever, my biggest goal is to make sure that it looks like the distance between the horizon and the grid line is equal from here to here on both sides. You know, that would be off. And so we end up there. Every once in a while I'll take and do like that if I think it looks better, because I want a good horizon. In this case, you know, I would just leave it. And then since we're talking about horizons, and then a lot of cases, if it's not real attractive and the property is way down here, you know, this property is right here, it's this square, I'll just take it out. And just crop it in like this. And then it doesn't matter, you know, and it looks better that way too. So, you know, this property ends right here. I don't want to get too tight on it. But anyhow, so moving on to another subject, with aerial photos, we also have this situation where, you know, I would rather take more photos with aerial than not have enough. So, like right here, you know, when you're processing aerial photos, you're going to want to really take a look at your next 3 photos to see which one is the best. I'm not saying to delete and edit out everything. I don't want to cherry pick this and not deliver a good number of photos. But when you've got these 2 photos, that one, in my opinion, isn't as good as that one. And that's, far down. And to be honest with you, it looks a little green, so we'll probably fix that. But, I would take that one out. I hit delete, and I hit enter, and it's gone. And now I have one here that looks honestly better than that, and the height hasn't changed. That's the biggest thing to look for. I think I raise up pretty good right there. That's a different photo than that. So I would keep both of these just because it's a little bit different on height. But this one could probably stand to go, and I'd keep these 2. The other trick behind that is I could keep this photo here, and I could focus on something like this field over here. In this particular case, I know I need to do that, but only because I know I took some good shots of this field later on. But I could do like this, and now I have a completely different photo. I'm not opposed to that. So I'm gonna take this and hit the outside sharp grass, and then hit outside sharp grass here. Really think my greens are a little messed up. My preset's always -20 on the greens. Yeah. Probably back that off a little bit. And then the best part of these aerials is a lot of times if you're around the same altitude, you can use the copy and paste. Once I start changing how high I am, it doesn't work because the lighting's just different. But I can copy that, hit paste, and it was a very slight difference, but the difference is there. So there's the photo. There's a photo. I'll probably bring this up just a touch. Another thing, our greens look really good here, but if we were having trouble with them or if they're looking funny, a lot of times this temperature will help. You can start bringing that up a notch or 2 if things look a little blue. But I think we're good. And that's the wonderful thing about this. Now, some people say, oh, wouldn't you just, batch these out, apply it, and then go back? Not really. Only because you won't notice the subtle changes as quickly or as easily as you would if you were coming through here one by one. Just like brightening that up. That's a big difference. So there's 2. These 2 are really close. So I'll get rid of this one. So another thing to keep your eye out for in these photos is sometimes areas of the photo like this will look like they're kind of leaning, and you can rotate this photo a little bit and it doesn't affect this property as much, but it kind of brings this up. It's a subtle difference, but I think that it helps. You know, the more I come around on this particular piece, you know, I'd still twist it just to try to help this out where it doesn't look like it's sliding down a hill. And sometimes it's actually leaning because quite literally the camera will be leaning. Sometimes the drone, even though the camera's on a gimbal, it's weird. It'll kind of false compensate and it'll be twisted a little bit. But anyway, just want to adjust the photo for what you see in post-production here. And you know, another situation of that, or the camera may have been fine, but like this property line may look a little weird. In this case, it's squared up pretty well. I try to line it up when I fly really well, but you know, sometimes you may want to turn it just to get it square. You know, just to make it look a little more pleasing to the eye. So there's a case where we've got basically two of the same photo. I could choose to like zoom in on something here. Well, there's three of them. So I'll delete this one. I've still got that one. And then I can fix this one. And maybe pick this field over here, kind of jump in on it a little bit. You know, it's another way to not waste the photo, but to give the client another option. Looks like I was snapping away here, so that one can go. The other reason that we don't want to have a lot of duplicates is because the agent, they don't always have a whole lot of time on their hands. So you know, sending them 4 or 5 of the same photo, it just kind of bogs them down. It sounds simple, but you know, like this photo looks very similar to this photo. So you got to kind of just go back and forth and figure out which one is better. It looks like I'm up a little bit higher. And then here we've got this crazy horizon thing going on here. So I had the camera tilted down on this one. And this one I don't. I think this looks like a better picture. So I might try to adjust this. I'm obviously not going to take and start twisting the photo more this direction to straighten that horizon out. So it's a perfect example of, you know, paying closer attention to this property line and then just eliminating that horizon by cropping it. And now we've got a photo that I think looks a little bit better. They wanted to show this. This is a big venue over here, and they wanted to show that off. So if that ever comes up, I'll always mention it. But you know, I can twist this over a little bit, and then we're looking a lot better. So I'm going to adjust this horizon a little bit. You see a small gap here and no gap on the other side. Just kind of even that out. You know, and this is fine. I mean, this property looks all on tilt, but you know, I don't have a problem with that because the rest of this is looking the way that it needs to. In this particular instance, I'm showing off. This is long hollow pike, and I'm showing all of that off down here. Yeah, so looks like I got down low, and when I just hit paste, you know, that doesn't, those colors don't look good. So you got to kind of figure that out. You know, sometimes when you get with these greens, taking the contrast out will really help. These aren't too bad, but sometimes you get some really wild green and yellow. So I'm not too concerned about this one because I've gotten a good number of shots from this angle. You know, I'd probably delete this photo actually, just because. So here we go. Now you can tell I'm down low, and I'm kind of shooting this area in here. So if when I hit paste, if it's not hitting like the way I want, instead of trying to tweak it like I just did on the last one, end up deleting it. You know, the way I set these presets up is a kind of a baseline, just as a starter, and you can already tell that looks better. And then, oops, you know, this is just like 0.12, and then I can adjust it from there. And I'm not real heavy on the saturation over here either, you know, because you start getting these greens getting real bright, and every once in a while, if I'm having trouble with the greens, I'll just take the saturation and the vibrance out. It's usually an easy way to fix that. But, you know, I do that and it ends up in the same spot right there. So, and whenever I do those sliders, I never look at the number. I look at the screen to see what makes most sense. Copy. And then this is a duplicate. This is a little bit closer. So here we've got another case of these, the horizon, you know, just easier to cut it out. Yes, so this is probably a good example of when you would want to keep a horizon, you know. I don't really try to start messing with those. Some people try to start pulling these gradients down and tweaking the colors and all of this. You know, I'm not so into that. I mean, you could, if it were bigger, there's certain situations that you can do that, but in this case, it's not worth it. So, making sure that it's straight is important, though. I want to straighten that up a little bit. That's a really good example of the horizon needing to be straightened. You know, and with the property line ending right here, this isn't a bad time. Sometimes I will take and crop this up, because and this isn't as dramatic of that effect, but it happens sometimes. Is it'll look almost like a panoramic view, just to the eye because it's so slender. Anybody that deals with a lot of panoramic views will realize it's not, but it looks almost like it's like a super wide angle lens or something like that, when you have a lot of elements in there. But anyway, this isn't the case, and usually you have to end up a little more thin like this, and it looks like this. People just really, they'll always comment on it. They'll be like, man, that wide one. And you know, for a while I was like, what are you talking about? And then I realized what they were talking about. It was these. So anyway, now I don't have a problem personally with taking out towers like this, depending on if it's on the property or right next to it. I don't take it out because that's kind of like false representation. But something like that, I don't have an issue with it. You know, it's a better looking photo. And then just like I straighten all my interiors and all of that, you know, we want to straighten these horizons out, make sure they always look nice and good. So as you can see, doing aerial photos is a whole lot easier than other real estate photos or even people. Just as far as the speed goes, there's some things to pay attention to. You know, this particular set, with this being raw land, there's not a lot going on to fix down in here. You know, sometimes there'll be a car, like I was parked over here. You know, you just take the car out type of thing. But on this set, we're not doing a whole lot of that. I don't fix dead spots usually, because again, we're kind of starting to tell these, you know, a different story about the property that's not true, and that's saying that this area has grass in it when it doesn't. So, you know, it ends up becoming very natural to know what to do. If by chance, if I were down low and just by chance there was a whole bunch of, you know, like these dead spots, or it was just a bunch of funky hay like they had just mowed, you know, I'll get in there and kind of clean those spots up, just, you know, to make it look nicer. But, you know, that's not really altering the property. That's not saying that there is grass where there's no grass. It's just like, hey, there's a really funky clump of hay over there, and I want it to go away type of deal. But like those little spots I just did, I don't get into doing that. So there's no point in it. But if you notice this photo, this building over here, you know, was kind of leaning. And so I brought that around, and that looks a lot better. And this photo kind of resembled one of these ones I just did, this one, but it's not, because it actually brings in this property line over here. So we're good. Here's a good example of, you know, click on here, and this is kind of a dingy green. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so I hit paste and it gets real bright green. So that's a bad deal. Even I hit that outside sharp grass, it's just, that green is off. And so, you know, we gotta try to fix that. That makes it more yellow. Actually bringing this blue down improved it quite a bit right there. And then bringing these shadows down, just it brings all the little black areas down and through the trees. It kind of gives it some texture. Yeah, and so that's a whole lot better. Lots of video. Okay, and this one's a little dark. It's actually a good photo. I'll have to bring the exposure up some. Twist it. Now here's the funny thing. Our subject property is over here, but I wanted to take this photo kind of showing what leads up to it, and ended up getting a lot of sky out of the deal. There's this tower. I'm gonna leave that. You know, this is a judgment call here. You know, that's far enough over to the left. It's like, okay, maybe give it to him. It doesn't hurt. It's more photos to choose from. Wow. That should not be that big a difference, but it is. Apparently this photo had the exposure correct and the other one was dark. So we'll bring that down. Tilt this. You know, it's a lot brighter on the greens. You know, am I looking for an exact match? No, but you know, I don't need this to be super bright green either. Yeah. So what happened is this one right here is the one I copied, and then the rest of these got shot at different exposures. So when I'm hitting paste, it's not working out. So what I do is I go back to the preset over here, kind of my just quick baseline, and then I make some small adjustments from there. Let's see. You know, this is a case where with the shadows down, those trees don't look as good, and I bring them up and they look a lot better. A real good example of that. So this is a good looking shot. You know, this is almost a shot where I'd want to take and do one of these deals right here. You know, because this is the property right here. So I go from this photo over here and hit paste, and again I just feel like that's too bright. So a lot of times I'll just back off that, hit the preset, and adjust it from there. This horizon is obviously off. You find that balance. I'll almost leave that as it is. I could stand to be brightened up just a touch. So with you know, again, the only photos I would ever want to not be included, or if you start getting these duplicates, this might look like just a bunch of junk, but people are really interested in open areas, especially with land when they're dealing with horses and stuff, and the odds are pretty high that there's some type of trail that cuts through here. I saw one that cuts through here, but anyway, that's what this is a picture of. Is let's see if this copies over. If it doesn't, again, I'll just have to yeah, it doesn't look bad. It was just a slight adjustment, but anyway, kind of straighten this up a little bit. You know, I've got this house over here, you know, it starts to look like it's on tilt, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I always try to bring these lines around as much as I can. Again, it's not super critical in this type of instance, but that's what this picture is. I'm taking a picture of this and this. Whether it ever made the listing, who knows? But you know, the agent gets to see these photos. The new owners get a chance to have the photos usually. When the sellers always will see the photos, and so that goes. That also goes for the woods. You know, I've taken a lot of pictures of these open areas. Now the center of my frame here is this wooded area. You know, and the agent a lot of times will pick this photo and they will talk about it. You know, I don't know how many acres that is, but it's a lot of wooded area. And so I went around here and I took photos of the woods being in the center of my frame. You know, and this paste on this one is working pretty well. So there's a duplicate. You know, I'd rather not have the horizon on that one. Yeah. And then once I, again, usually it's when I change altitude that the paste doesn't work, because the lighting and the distance and of everything is just different. So I just start from scratch again. Be a little careful. You know, here's the horizon. This is a hill of trees that go up. So like, I need to try to keep the horizon straight, not this. So that's that. And another one of my goals, even, you know, with all kind of photos, is to keep this all looking very realistic. I don't want to start blowing anything out, you know, or sucking the shadows out of these trees, as a lot of people love to do that. You know, I'll do that to an extent, but I'll always add it back just a touch and add back the darks. And that way it looks real. You know, that's a duplicate, basically. Take the first one out. I'm trying to show off this fence. Just delete that one right away. I'm not really sure where that is. Not that it matters. That goes up to there. It may have zoomed around to the back corner. That's exactly where that is. That's the back side, that back sliver. Yeah, it's right there. But you know, that image right there, I hit paste again, it it needs to be brought up. Somebody burning something over here. You know, I see that a lot when I'm out in the country, is you have somebody doing a big burn pile, and sometimes you got to try to get rid of that smoke. This isn't that bad, but sometimes it's not a good thing. You know, and then here's this place. Fix the horizon. You know, and I want this to look nice too. So, you know, these people, their driveway comes down right past this place, so it's relevant. That's why I took a picture of it. You know, a lot of times you won't have these details when you're doing these photos, but if it's important, I'll always share it with you. You know, and that property is right back here. So here's a good example of a duplicate that I would probably go out of my way to try to do something with. You know, this is good, and then maybe try to do something like this. This is the driveway. Something like that. So you can see what a huge difference that makes in this photo. It just makes it look like a completely different shot. Obviously we've got these power lines here, but if I were to try to get up above those, I mean, this may work, we'll see. It just cuts that whole pond out. Yeah, I don't mind the power lines on that one, honestly. Sometimes I really try to go out of my way to avoid power lines. But, you know, in this case, I think it looks fine. Let's see what the end of these photos looks like. It'll kind of tell me what I need to do as far as cropping. I just get up higher. So right here, you know, I was trying to get a shot of this entryway, and so that's another case where I would crop down. There comes a point where you can only crop down so far before it starts to distort, or, you know, get real grainy. Yeah, it doesn't look that great, so I would toy around with that. Yeah, I'd probably just leave that the way it is. My goal was to try to get that driveway, but, you know, with it being in the center, it's obviously the subject of the photo, so that looks fine. So ending out this set, you know, I look at this and I'm like, okay, let me adjust this horizon, but it's such a small amount. And in my opinion, doesn't add to that photo that much. I can focus a little bit more on making all of this look like it's balanced. Because again, a lot of times we balance the horizon, but the photo looks like it's a little bit tilted. So, you know, and there's a great example. I mean, look at that. And this horizon's way down but that photo looks a lot better. I mean, I'm rotated -3. Maybe do a little bit more. Yeah. That one doesn't need to be rotated as much, but that is one set of aerial photos. And one big thing that I do at the end of a lot of photos is I scrub them or review them, and I come back through and just look for anything that stands out the second time through. A lot of times I'll catch a duplicate. A lot of times I'll catch a big color variance. Every once in a while I'll catch a horizon that I missed. But the goal is to deliver a set of photos that the agent doesn't feel like they're having to do the sifting. You know, in other words, there's not a lot of duplicates and stuff like that. They can see a lot of different photos that they can just pick from. So there's a big difference right there. That green is different. I don't think it's bad, but it's definitely different. Brighten that green up just a touch. You know, sometimes they take a color shift, meaning like, you know, the next 10 photos may just have a different color. Maybe, you know, the sun popped out from behind a cloud that it was hiding, you know, behind a cloud, and then all of a sudden everything's brighter or whatever. But, you know, I try to make sure there's not any huge color shift. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't really like this photo. So I go through this, and then after I've exported the photos, I do the same thing. I'll go through the whole set. I'll just click straight through them and make sure nothing stands out, because again, something will look different sometimes on here than it does in the exported version. You know, that's a bad shot. There we go. I mean, I still don't like the way that this house looks like, or the place looks like it's tilting. So I would twist this around, probably just crop in on it. Make it look a little bit more like that. I mean, these are virtually the same photo, minus that car. So I take this one out. And then that's it. The only thing left is to export. And so I'm gonna go and find the folder for this, create my Lightroom folder, select it, make sure that the name is correct. So this is, I usually will just do the street, And then here we have to limit the file size. I go 1900. And then here we do the width and the height, 1200, 1200, and then 300. And we're all set. I remove personal information, remove location information, just because. But I know that there's a couple. This is under custom name and then sequence, and I do the 1, so it'll be long hollow 1, and then it'll name them sequentially from there on. And this is at 1900 because the MLS will only accept photos to 2 megabytes, and so 1900 kilobytes is 1.9 megabytes. So anyhow, and we want to select all of these, and then hit export. So that's it. So here's another set of aerial photos, and in this case the sky looks a lot better than it normally does, but I use the same preset. I try to find what fits best after that by hitting exposure. You know, watch these trees. Or again, I don't want to pull all of the shadows out of the trees, but I don't need them being dark either. So find that little bit of middle ground. And same with the darks here. I get it where it's just blown out, and then I bring that color back in just a touch. So it's like that's a little washed out, and then I bring it just down there. And the odds are high I can hit copy and be able to use it for a couple photos. I've talked about this in the past. You know, I would consider that a duplicate. I can't really crop in on this and make a better looking photo. We could try, but usually that's not going to be the case on this, but or at least not what I would do. Let's do that. So I lied. You know, there's another nice photo. Always looking at the horizon. It's not the best. You know, that the detail's not there on that. You know, could I do that if I felt like I was really lacking? Like, you know, sometimes it's just tough to get a lot of photos. Either I was short on time or whatever. You know, I would do something like this if I was, you know, trying to make them feel as though they're getting their money's worth, and I, you know, was again short on photos or something like that. This would be one, but I don't really think that I don't really think that's necessary on this. So here we go. And if you notice, I always talk about I get to a different elevation and the colors don't apply. You know, I've gotten up a lot higher here, and I hit paste, and this looks a little washed out. So, you know, one of the first things I'll do is straighten this up, and then get up here. And the shadows are almost always going to affect the trees more than anything. And the darks will affect the trees, but also the whole photo. There we go. And when I first start out, a lot of times I'll just make sure that these color tones match and I'm not way off. So notice I copy it again. It's another duplicate. I hit paste on that one and it's darker. I may have been adjusting my exposure since I just started flying. You know, with the drone, the exposure on the drone. But on this one, let's do that. Let's straighten this. Maybe crop it in a bit. You know, once you get to a certain place, again, as far as cropping it, getting it in too small, you start to lose the quality and the photo doesn't make as much sense. But, you know, this isn't that bad of a photo. I think it looks kind of nice. I think it's still a little blown out. You know, when I look at the house, but that looks good. And then maybe lighten that up. I had a gentleman mention, and it's not bad here, this kind of this haze that comes in here. If you ever feel like getting rid of that, you know, I don't have a problem with it. That's how you would do that. I'm gonna work through, you know, our property here is straight along through here, and then it comes down. So in that case, you know, I mean, I've rotated it quite a bit, kind of get this road even, get the lines as perpendicular as I can. It never hurts to preview a couple of photos to just make sure I haven't taken 3 or 4 and that there's not a better one. And then you're like, oh, I can delete the first 2 and like the third one's better, because that happens a lot. You know, the first shot is just kind of a test to make sure I've captured the area, and then I'll improve on that shot. And then also, you know, this is a good example of one that it wouldn't hurt to maybe just crop in a little bit. It's the back of the property, because I've got this one. Now I've got it zoomed in a little bit, and then the agent can decide. So that's kind of a funky angle. That's not anything where I would try to rotate. Every once in a while, I'll take something like that and try to straighten it up, but that's not going to work on this. So just leave that for what it is. And this would be more of one that I would maybe twist this just a touch. So this resembles one of the first photo that I took, but it's up a little higher and further back. And then obviously I just hit paste and the color is not right. So, and the horizon's not even either. Let's see. Hit that. Straighten that up. It just needs to be brightened. The overall color, I think, looks better than the previous one, but that's that. I don't think copying this color is gonna benefit me. I guarantee it won't. Yeah, it's just blown out right there, so no biggie. I don't always get to do the copy and paste on the aerial, but when I do, it just speeds things up. This is a good example. You know, rotating this horizon actually sends this in the opposite direction that I would want. So I would take this horizon out and then kind of spin the house where it makes a little bit more sense. So we don't ever want to make a house look like it's leaning or tilting. And another trick is You know, could I leave those trees a little bit brighter? I could, but then it makes the green, the overall green, just flow back there. But when I darken that back there, it kind of brings the attention up here. It makes the photo a little bit more two-dimensional, if you will. Like, this is the dark area, this is the light area, so it brings your eyes down. So I try to pay attention to that if I'm trying to, you know, that evens everything out. I'm trying to bring some attention to a specific area. So these angles can get funny. The reason that is that I'm catty corner to this, and I'm above it with the camera angled down at the house, and so I don't like, you know, that horizon can be straight all at once. I don't like the way that house looks, and that's the most important part. So again, to save this photo, probably bring that out and then twist this around. Would make more sense. And I'm sure there will end up being better photos. This may not be the one that they use, but the last thing I'm going to do is deliver a cruddy looking photo. You know, that one's not bad. It probably will work when I straighten it up. Yeah, so that looks decent. And it, you know, the purpose here is show the house and show the whole yard there. Yeah, so that looks good. This one would be a little bit brighter. Straightened. Now, if I have plenty of photos, I don't mind go in and, again, using this, cropping it is a wonderful way to just totally change the way it looks. And the other reason for that, the other reason it looks great is that, you know, in general, drones, you can't zoom, right? So you just, everybody that's flying has a fixed lens, unless they've got a huge drone that carries a DSLR. So now you've got an aerial photo that doesn't look anything like what anybody else can produce, because technically we've zoomed it. And that's why people go nuts over this, because they're seeing, number one, an angle that they've never seen of their property before. But number two, the agents are like, wow, I've never seen that type of shot, because most people don't crop in. Don't hear me wrong, I don't think this is some spectacular shot, but it's better than where we started with that photo. I don't use this horizontal too much, but if you look at this roof line here, it really straightens it up. I'm looking at this line and then this line. And that helps a lot. So obviously I've got the sun at a different angle, so I hit paste and the colors don't apply. So I've got to readjust everything. You know, that's about how I'd want that house to look. If you look at the lines, you know, the grid lines, it's never going to be straight because of the fact that you know, if you think about it, a vertical adjustment like this would get it straight. It doesn't even look all that bad, but a lot of times it deforms some of the other lines. I mean, we're at plus 70. So I don't think this horizon is all that bad, and honestly, to cut it out wouldn't make a lot of sense. And who knows, maybe I'll be wrong, but if I cut it out, we're going to look like this. If I can get away with it, yeah, you know what, it doesn't look that bad. Sometimes you can chop down on it and it throws off the focus of the subject that's in the photo. In this case, the house is the subject. But no, I don't think that looks bad. I think it's an improvement on this horizon being there. I mean, the clouds don't look that great, and plus, again, the horizon's dipping, and I do everything in my power not to deliver photos with a slanted horizon, so that's actually a big improvement. Brighten this up just a touch. That's a good photo. That's one that they could definitely use. Oh, that looks like I took some more. Yeah, I started coming in on this. You know, so, and that's probably a little steep. Shaping up this whole area. But again, here I'm previewing what I've got coming up so that I know what I need to spend my time on. You know, there's two of the same shot. If I didn't already have this back area, I'd keep one and crop the other one into here, but you know, there's no need to do that because I've already shot the back of that house really well. So, and then that's the end of me shooting the back of that house. So I'll go and I'll back up here. You know, here's this good shot. That's the same. And then I start getting closer. That shot can probably go. So I'm gonna hit copy on this one and see if I get lucky on the colors. Yeah, those colors look pretty good. And so I'm gonna take this, since I already have a rear view of this house, and I'm gonna focus in on this area right here. This kind of back of the home area. Where this patio set and this parking is. See, all that right there. So now they're like, oh, look at that. Not a big fan of how there's not a lot of extra detail there, but now they've got an extra shot if they wanted to add it that talked about the parking. Ooh, blew that out. And honestly, you know, the only reason I've kept these around is this may be a better way to show it. I don't have to crop as much, so my detail's going to be there a bit more. And get a longer frame out of the deal. And every once in a while, I'll adjust for vertical a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 clicks, because I don't want to start distorting things too much. You know, just to bring these lines around. It just helps. So that shot's competing with that shot. I'd say it's better. You know, and it shows that this needs to be spun around. But I'd say that shot's better than this shot, so I don't need this shot. So out of all of those shots in the back, we've got this main one, that one, and then we're going to have a deck shot here. So I'm rotating this because I'm looking at the deck. I'll bring this in. There we go. And I have a shot where I'm standing on this deck and I'm looking over, but I would dare to say that that's a much better way to show off that deck. And normally with the drone these days you don't have to mess with this distortion, but when you get real close, if you feel like the roof line is bending or anything like that, you know, it never hurts to just push it in a little bit, because the goal is to, you know, have these be as true as possible. Drones have a very wide angle as it is, and these companies, especially DJI, has done a good job of eliminating any kind of distortion, but you still get it. If you get real close to something, you'll get some distortion. Yeah, I'd say that'll do the trick. I mean, we could twist this around all we want, but that's probably going to do it. And then we're back out here. You know, I've mentioned in other videos, but a lot of times I won't alter the condition of a property. But if I've got, you know, I'm not going to clean all of this up, but if I've got some stuff right here in the very front part of the frame, or the whatever, the closest part, you know, I may get in there and clean that up just a little bit, just so it's not as much of a distraction. But again, I haven't tried to paint this as though this whole property is flawless either, because, you know, I don't believe that that's right. But in this particular spot, I think that it would help just for the eyes. Yeah, see, clean that up a little bit, and then they can see that, you know, okay, it's not a perfect lawn. There's still some spots over here. Not sure what's causing that, but anyway, it's not the very first thing that your eye gravitates to. Okay, and maybe I saw that. So I don't know what I was doing other than snapping a bunch of shots. You know, this is an improvement on this, and you just, you know, leave that in the set. But I'm sure that this is supposed to be an improvement, and then I may have adjusted the exposure there. You know, some people like to come in here and tweak the sky and stuff like that. You see people do that. Another thing you can do is come in here with the this tool here. It's kind of neat. I saw this on a video, and you just click in the color you want and drag down or up, you know, and it will affect that color. Let's see where, there it is. You watch these sliders move. So, you know, I used to do stuff like that, a little subtle difference on the blue, but you know, that looks better than that. So we'll keep this one. And again, most of the time I wouldn't encourage you to delete this, but since I'm kind of the one in control of this set, I'm going to delete that. And I know that that's the better shot. Come in here and straighten this horizon up. That looks good, but again, a lot of times I like to just see what's going on with the shadows, and if it makes it look better or worse, to adjust it, especially if I'm working off of a preset. And it looks like I ended up in the same, you know, -13 is pretty common. Okay, so I took 2 photos. This is obviously a picture of this area right here. So, just, you know, when all else fails, interior or exterior, I take the exposure, the shadows. In this case, the shadows don't look bad pulled all the way out. Again, I almost always add a little bit back to it. But those 3 sliders are my go-to after I've done my preset. I'm going to end up really close to where I usually do. And since we're at the same height, it's going to help me out a lot. So another good example, I've got several of the basically the same shot here, so that's probably the better shot just because it's closer. In this case, we'll see if we need to rotate any of them first. Probably better off like that. And then this one, I'll rotate it and crop it. And that way the agent can pick what they want to do. You know, if I'm really focusing on this backyard, that's going to make a huge difference. So boom, there's your big backyard. Go from that to that. Oh, looks like I came in on the deck again. Much better shot of this deck. I forgot that I had done this, but I shoot a deck a lot of times from this angle, and it's just a lot better. So again, you see a very slight bow. There's nothing wrong with pushing that out. And it never hurts just to play with the slider, see if a vertical is going to help or not. You know, see how it affects these windows. In this case, I wouldn't really mess with it. I mean, I could leave that on there. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not distorting it. And then I have a second shot that's the same. Again, for the realtor, I wouldn't deliver both of these just so that it's one less that they have to sift through. They don't like to see a whole lot of the same shot. It's more effort and energy for them to have to pick through it and look at it. It's just make their life simple. Give them one good shot of the deck. You know, I've got plenty of shots of this area, but you never know what people, how they want to show something. So here's the garage area. So looks like I went back to the rear of the property and got down lower on this tree line. This might be a good time to do something like this. Nah, I don't do that too often, but you know, this sky's blown out and that just is what it is. Again, it may just be better to do like this since that's my focus. Yeah. So that's in closer. I think this is the other image of that. And that's down there. Oh, there it is. There we go, we're showing off the sky. And then maybe we'll brighten the grass up a little bit. Bring in just enough on those trees where they don't look weird. Touch of the darks. Okay, and this one's no good. Alright, so then at the end of every set, no matter what, there's 136 photos here. I go back to the beginning and I scrub through them, and you know, that was the first photo I did. I'd already adjusted it a little bit, but it obviously needs to be turned. I mean, and that's the reason I do it. I do that is like as soon as you see a photo, sometimes you can just tell, and I, you know, spun it pretty good. You know, things will just stand out to you like that. And then I just click through and make sure if there's anything that stands out color-wise. You know, here the door is open, the front door, and then it closes. So I'll deliver that both ways, and they can figure that out. You know, I'd say I'm just a little bit bright on the front of this house. Notch that down. You know, I don't go through and adjust every single photo, but again, if I see something that stands out, especially on something that needs to be symmetrical like this, then, you know, I'm going to go back through and fix it.